Hey everybody. So once again you are in for a treat. It's Gospel Music Buzz here again with new, uplifting, wholesome content for you. Today is no exception. We've got our brother, my Brooklyn native, he is a background vocalist. He has over 25 years of experience in the gospel music industry. He is a pastor and our friend Thomas Warren Jr. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thomas, welcome to the show. Congratulations on the new project, which we're going to get into shortly. But, before we even start, we like to at least kick it off with one or two icebreaker questions. And my first question for you is that, why is it whenever someone is from Brooklyn, they always feel the need to say, I'm from Brooklyn, and it always follows by a dance? See, you're doing it already. You're doing it already. Explain that. Bro, why is that the case?
Bro, Brooklyn is its own country within a country. I just want everybody to know that. Like, there's no other place like it, and we just carry a fraternal connection. No matter where we go, we're from Brooklyn. It just makes sense that we rock that way. So, we got our own little swag, our own movement with it.
Yeah.
I love Brooklyn. I'll always be from Brooklyn. And shout out to my Flatbush queen who joined, who is representing with us today. Don't feel left out. It's okay.
Listen, Queens. Okay. I'm gonna rap Queens. I'm gonna rap you.
Yes, for Queens.
Stand up.
Yes.
Look at it. You know what? I'm just gonna keep going.
Can't fight it.
I'm not gonna even try. So, we know you've been, within the 25 years, you've done so much with so many different artists while being on the road, from Mariah, Justin Timberlake, Will Smith, several different artists. So what was one of those, I guess I would say, memorable moments while you were out there that something happened, some, little nugget was shared? What was one thing that kind of stuck with you during that period?
I think one of the most memorable background moments that I've had was with BB Winans. We were doing some session work for him, and I got asked to come back and do some overdubs. And I don't know about anybody else, but at the time, I wasn't like as prepared as I am now to keep singing past certain hours. Mm-hmm. And it was 11 o'clock when they wanted to start the session, and my voice was asleep. And so I get in front of the mic and I am cracking like it's like I'm beyond control, to the point where BB got on the mic and was like, hey, do you need some tea? You need some water? We're like, what do you need? So I went and got some tea and some water, and I came back and it was worse. And to the point where he literally had to stop the session, come out and have a conversation with me and pull me together. And I wonder if he remembers that, but that was most memorable for me because it was the moment where I was like, okay, I guess I kind of needed to sharpen my skill a bit and kind of figure this thing out in a different way. And it was a moment where I started to take singing more serious than I had. You're a church singer. You sing by virtue of being in church, but when you move to the next level, it does require you to kind of be on your game in a different way. So I remember that moment. I will always remember that moment. It actually put me in a good place. So,
how long ago was
that? It was BB's first solo album, so I want to say over 20 years. That was
wow.
And it was singing in Bishop Hezekiah Walker's Love Fellowship Crusade Choir. We got introduced to so much of the music industry. Like, the gospel music industry was expanding at that time in a secular way. And so we were getting invited on so many projects, and I was doing sessions after sessions after session, and just doing as a choral vocalist, not realizing that it required you to kind of hone your skills a bit in the studio to be front and center sometime. And so that moment kind of made a huge difference for me. And I was like, okay, I need to got with a vocal coach. We had to sit down and figure out some things and make me better.
Right. See, that's good that you. Oh, go ahead, Janelle.
I was gonna just ask him, what was that process like? That nurturing stage from going from the background vocalist, then to doing some overdubs, and now making it to the main stage.
It's an evolution. It is something that I'm still becoming. But you have to, I just firmly believe that when you do something for God, you have to do it with excellence. And the Bible even says that he doesn't put a novice to work. So if you realize your passion, if you realize your purpose, you should sow into that in the way of preparedness. And so it is something that you have to give attention to, and that I did give attention to. I'm still giving attention to. I don't think I've arrived in any way. I think it'll probably be an evolution for me throughout this whole experience. But it's been very enlightening. You get to know yourself, your boundaries, your inadequacies, and you kind of deal with yourself and become a better person as part of sharpening your skill musically.
I see you mentioned one thing there, right? In terms of prepared, and for you, I guess if we can latch on to that a little bit more. So, how important was it for you to prepare yourself and your integrity so that it lined up with your ministry as well? Because again, you've been doing this for 25 plus years, and after all those years, now you felt, okay, I think I'm ready to launch out in front, whereas others could now start and they're ready to get in front. So it's like you served, you stayed in the back for a while, prepared. So touch a little bit on the preparation, how it aligns with ministry.
Yeah, I think a large part of who I am has been in support of ministry for a long time. I've been in the church, I don't know how many decades. And I've worked in every facet of the church. And then in music, I started in the choir and was doing backgrounds, and you kind of grow in there. I didn't actually decide, hey, I'm going to go out front like this year. I knew some time ago that I wanted to do it, but I also realized that I wasn't prepared. So to your point about preparedness, I needed to go figure that out. And it was less, after a while, it became less about me being vocally prepared and more about the integrity piece and me being able to stand by the message of the music and not go out here and embarrass the kingdom. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be out here like, just doing anything and calling it God. I want to walk in some level of integrity with what I do. So yeah, it was me understanding, what my calling was, specifically my calling and different than other people's, and what that meant for me to do, how to avail myself to that. So there were things that I had to conclude in my life in order to do it. I couldn't, there were certain things I couldn't take with me into where I am now. And so it took about 12 years for me to be able to say, okay, I'm ready to go. And that's why the album took as long as it did. We were actually working over this time, but I just wasn't in the position to release until now.
I love that. I love that your integrity was more important than the popularity, or more important than the status of being the front man on stage. That's powerful. I feel like a lot of that, the essence of that concept is lost in the gospel music, in church in general. So to hear someone say that was more important to be prepared on the inside than to look ready on the outside is powerful.
But I've seen so many of my fellow Christians go out in front of their calling, and it's not that they're not called. In many instances, they are, and in the same way, David was anointed king well in advance of him actually walking into his kingship. So it is that moment where you are called. Now, are you prepared? And so I can't tell you how me and God had to have some real heart-to-hearts. There were parts of this I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this no more. I'm over it. That's okay. Let me just sit back here and do it. But when it's your calling, you kind of feed into it.
See, I was going to say too, but that's also like a level of humility as well as maturity too, right? And I guess you can even, top on honesty on top of that as well too, right? Because to be honest with oneself, to know like, hey, this is what I need to do. But even during that preparation phase, so for anyone right now that is going through their preparation phase, like what are some of the practical things would you say kind of helped you through that phase?
Good question. I honestly would say anyone in this place now where you're realizing, hey, I've got a passion or I've got a purpose, and God has called me to something, I would definitely say dedicate yourself to local ministry first, to connect yourself to a church body, a church organization, a pastor, an elder, someone who can help you cultivate what it is that you're birthing. And we don't realize the value of that experience in a way that it actually does do that. It does nurture and cultivate, and it provides a safe place for you to grow before you're put in public, where the demand on you is going to be much greater. And then the other thing is you have to come to know who you are as a person, because that's going to be challenged when you stand in front of other people. When you have to minister, encourage, and inspire others, you have to do that in many instances despite yourself. Despite how you feel, despite how good of a day you're having, how bad of a day you're having, how wonderful life is, how wonderful life may not be, you have to still stand in and deliver upon what God has given you. And if you don't know yourself well enough, that will stand in front of that. So I would say that as a second thing as well. And then the last thing I would say is develop a strong connection to God, a connection that means that you hear his voice over your own. Because there are going to be some things out here that will entice you and be attractive, and that may be running in parallel to what your calling is, but not necessarily be your calling. And so you got to be able to decipher and discern, what's for you and what's not for you.
I'm so glad you talked about a local ministry, because that was going to be my next question. Where do you fellowship, and how does that integrity align to the accountability of a pastor? Mm-hmm. Right? So you can have all the integrity in the world, but then who's your covering? Who are you accountable to?
Exactly.
When you slip up, who's that person that's going to be like, Thomas, now you know.
Who are you going to listen to, right? Who are you going to let speak into you that can hold you accountable? Yeah, good question.
Good question. So I've been, my mother is an apostle, and she started her church over 25 years ago. So I've been in ministry with her for over 25 years. And to your point, yes, there were things as I grew into ministry and grew into pastorship that I needed to bring to a steady state, or to bring to a place where I can maintain it before I can come out and start doing music, because you can't turn your back on your fellowship now because you have this music ministry that is also yours. So I had to ensure that there was the right succession in my church. I had to ensure that we had the right organizational structures, and that a lot of the operational components of the church were in place before the Lord gave me the go ahead to kind of move into this way. And I am so thankful for my local assembly, because to your point, those are the people that say, now you're wrong. Now, we love you, Pastor, but we need to talk to you. So they keep you grounded, they keep you centered, and they get you and they understand you. And I expose myself to them, and I make sure that there are moments of vulnerability with them first. So I kind of test the waters to make sure that it's okay, and to make sure that they are exposed to me in a way that they wouldn't be shocked if they saw it in another place. So.
Yeah, and I think that's important what you mentioned too, right? Because without that, right? Because if you're not in a place where you're able to receive, and where you're able to, kind of understand and get what's happening from that perspective, and it's just gonna really mess you up, right? Because at that place,
it really does.
You're just operating just out of self, or just out of whatever it is you're operating. And at that point, that just doesn't work that way. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And then, this is something that we were discussing even before, right? So I'll have you tell it, who would you compare yourself to musically, and who have you rather been compared to musically, and who are some of your musical influences?
I've heard, since the release, I've heard B.B. Winans, I've heard Seal, I've heard Nat King Cole, I've heard so many things. I try not to compare myself to other greatness, because that will shake you in a way that I take it as a compliment, but I can't live up to those standards. So I just try to do the best that I can. I would say my musical influences range because I don't just listen to gospel music, and that's one of the things that I learned, after leaving high school, is that there was so much music out here that I hadn't been exposed to, and so I listen to lots and lots of music. One of my biggest musical influences is Layla Hathaway, and she is amazing in her own right, but she's also taken time to kind of sew into what I do and been present for what I do. And I consider her a friend, and but she's also musically one of my musical influences. Kim Burrell has also done the same. She's taken time to kind of to speak into my life, and not anyone is a mentor, like a one-on-one type everyday type deal, but in occasions these guys have been present and have spoken greatness into what I do. So I really admire those guys. And then the host of the industry, from the Winans to Commission to the Hawkins, like just so many influences.
Yeah. And we definitely get the hip hop, urban, R&B feel on your album. It's clear. Like even from the first track after the interlude, Just Go, I was like, Sherwin, this sounds like I'm hearing like Blackstreet, like I'm hearing those old school R&B vibes coming through on this track.
It's old school R&B. I think I'm an R&B singer saved by grace. And so, but again,
the lost Blackstreet Boys.
Blackstreet, not Backstreet Boys.
No, I said Blackstreet.
But yeah, I just felt like I've always. This was a part of the becoming, right? So I knew what my sound was. It didn't sound like church. I couldn't do what this church sound was, and I didn't know where it fit. And so I had to kind of figure out, well, what am I doing? Like, where's it going? Like, who am I singing to? And the Lord really had to start pruning a lot of those inadequacies and those concerns away from me, and just do it, sir. Just go, like, just make it happen. And but a lot of what you will get from me, most of what you will get from me, will sound like it should be played on your local R&B station.
Oh. And what's crazy is that I grew up in church all my life. My parents are pastors, but it wasn't until maybe I was like 12 and I heard a CeCe Winans track, All Right. And I was like, oh my, and I saw the video and they were all dancing and I was like, I could listen to this. Like I could vibe with this.
Mm-hmm.
And,
it's a vibe.
And your music will do that for my children, right? Mm-hmm. Like they'll hear this and be like, okay, this is cool enough for me to play around my friends. So if mom pulls up with this on, I'll be all right.
Right.
So
and it's a vibe. That's exactly what it is. My music is a vibe. And I think the young people have kind of coined that for me. And when they said it to me, it was like, yeah, I'm going to use that. Like it is. It's not Sunday morning. It's more Friday night, Saturday night type prep for your Sunday service. So I like that space. I also realize that the people that God has called me to minister to are not necessarily sitting in church on Sunday. And so I'm creating a sound that's more palatable for them where they are, and then I can reach them differently than the worship and praise experience or the choral experience that we would have attached to a Sunday service.
And I think that's so important because now with quarantine, most people have been out of a church service for over a year. So what church looks like for most as of late is different.
Exactly. For everyone. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Very different. And I don't think it will ever look the same, which was the other part of this. It was like, so then how do I bring this message when I don't know where I'm going? Like, what's the construct? I'm settling in a bit more with the fact that everything does not have to be determined. And if you know anything about me, I'm more like A, B, C, right? Like, and it can't be A, B, Q because you're going to stump me and I'm going to be stuck for like a good 5 minutes. Like it has to be very linear for me. But the Lord is, I remember having to deal with a lot of ambiguity in my life, and the Lord had to settle me around that space and knowing his voice and feeling his presence and being okay with that. So that's what this is now, because you don't know what music is, what the landscape of music will look like. You don't know, where the venues will be for performance. You don't know when we'll be doing that live stuff. You don't know whether there'll be, more demand or less demand once you come out of this. So there's just so many question marks, but you just got to move and trust God.
See, and that's important too, what you mentioned, right? Because with everything changing and being flexible to just say, hey, I might not have all the answers, but I'm still going to trust him. I'm still going to go forward with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that also kind of, starting from the top with the new album that was released, the new project, brand new. So just even transitioning to something, brand new, like the title, the name, the single, just like touch a little bit on that for us.
So I was this project has been in the works for so long, the title has changed at least 2 times. I was a few years ago, I was sitting and just realizing that there was a lot of stuff that were new beginnings for me. And the Lord spoke very clear and was like, you don't have to wait for a new year. You don't need a new birthday. You don't need any new occasion. You can be new right now. Right now. No one even has to celebrate it. You can make a determination, make a decision to change, and that starts something else for you. And that is the construct, the concept, the message from this album. You can say goodbye to some things. You can encourage yourself sometimes. You just go. But whatever it is, be new, be brand new right now. And a lot of the messaging in this project is really about that, inspiring people to make a decision that, there's some things in my life that need to change, or there's some things in my life that I need to grow with or grow from. I need to do that now. And don't wait for the occasion of a new year. Don't wait for the occasion of your next birthday or a milestone or some big accomplishment. Do it now. Brandon.
Like it.
And talk to us about Expected End. That's a track that's impacting radio right now. We want to know, tell us about Expected End.
So that was can I tell you the story? This is really funny. I was in church and I was supporting my friend's service, and I wasn't necessarily paying attention to the pastor who was in the mic when they had called for the offering. And when he called for the offering, he asked that we place the offering in his hand. And I didn't place it in his hand. I went and put it in the basket, and I went back to my seat. And he said, who's the tall man that put the money in the basket, didn't follow my instructions? And of course, I being the tallest person in the church, everybody knew it was me. And so he called me out, and he was like, so I went to reach in to get the money back. He's like, no, don't reach back in to take the money out. It's done already. But he was talking to me in front of the church, and he's like, the Lord's thoughts towards you are good and perfect. And he said, towards an expected end. And he said, and you do music. And I said, yes. And he said, yes, your first single from your project will be, and he left it for me. And I was like, and he was like, Expected End. And I was like, So I took it, and I left it at that. 3 weeks later, I'm coming up out of the train station, and the Lord just downloads this entire song in my spirit, just as you hear it.
Wow.
Expecting it. And it really is, like if ever that message was poignant, it is now. Like in a time of pandemic and in a time of civil unrest and social unrest, we need to know that there's a bigger plan than what we are experiencing right now, or that all that we're experiencing ties into what God has for us. So I want that to just resonate with everyone who can resonate with. Don't just be consumed with where we are. Elevate a bit and realize that God's thoughts towards you are good and perfect, thoughts to prosper and never to harm you, and that we should just pivot and turn to our expected end.
Right. And I'm so glad you mentioned social unrest and how even music, how your music, this song, alludes to that and can affect that. Over the years and just historically, music has always been like the backdrop to social empowerment, addressing social unrest.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel like your music, and what role do you feel like music plays in addressing social issues today?
Music is the line of communication that goes throughout the world. and it even defies language barriers. And so I really feel like music needs to always reflect the state of the time. And when we look at the 60s and we look at the 70s, and we had all those social protest and empowerment songs, they did that. And when you looked at what was happening socially and in the context at the time, they matched that. We lost that for a few decades, and I think we're coming back to that now. I think music needs to do that. I don't think that it is just the responsibility of our secular artists to do that. I do think the church needs to take a position on the injustices that are happening in our communities, because the history of the church is that we would do that. The church was the Mecca for the voice of the Black community. It was a Mecca for us to congregate and create conversation and to vent. And so then the church music and the church agenda needs to address that. So gospel needs to take a moment to step out of the pages of the book and start dealing with what's going on in the streets. And so if they don't, I will. There's a song on my album, on my project, I said album, called "Can We Try?" And it says just that. It's can we try to address some of this stuff, because it's real. And that was born out of the time of George Floyd's incident. And it set me back so much that I was standing in the kitchen. It just started pouring out of me in that way. So I'm going to continue to do that, especially now with all that's going on with our Black brothers and sisters. It pains me to see, and my music is going to address as much of it as I can.
So what do you feel like holds some other gospel artists back from addressing these issues in their music?
The good thing about being an independent is I get to choose what I say and what my voice sounds like, and how it is delivered. And I think one of the things that holds our gospel artists back, at least the mainstream gospel artists, is that they're not independent and potentially can't stray that far away from what their platforms are, and that potentially platforms don't give way for that type of statement, right? So if you are a praise and worship artist, it would be a departure for you to do a civil protest song. I do think, though, that there's a collective power that's being missed on some level, where we can come together and create, and that would create a platform and create a larger voice than if we did it singularly. But until that exists, I'm just going to keep on pressing.
Kind of like a "We Are the World" type moment, right?
Absolutely.
I'm getting that vibe.
Like I feel like at this point, I think we need to. We ain't the world. That's what we need to write that song, because we ain't. Because y'all.
That's fun. Oh man, no, that's important what you said, man. I'm just like I'm listening to you, and I'm like, man, I even forgot what my next question was. I'm just like, this is spot on. This is exactly.
We're just flowing.
But now next Friday, so you got something exciting happening next Friday, April 23rd. So you're doing something. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm excited about this. I have my first live concert, and it'll be on my Facebook pages. So if you're listening, please follow me on IG and Facebook. Everything's Thomas Warren Jr., and I will direct you to that concert. It is a combination of an interview and a concert, so people get to understand the makings of me and the makings of this project, and then also get to hear 5 or 6 songs from the project itself. And it should be, I want to say it's like maybe 40, 50 minutes. But I really feel I'm very excited about it, because it's the first time that I get to sing my music from this project. I haven't been able to go anywhere with it. So it's like, hey, we get to have a concert. So I'm very excited about it, guys. Please join me. It'll be live, and we'll be talking and threading and chatting, all that type stuff. So
that is so exciting, because you're going from doing background vocals for other people, and now you're center stage doing what God put in your heart.
And when I tell you, that is not easy. A lot of people, and again, it goes back to you wanting to be out there and you being prepared to be out there, standing up front and having to own what everyone is delivering, and that meets the mark. It's a lot. You have a lot to deal with. And I will say that working with Bishop Walker has helped me a lot. He's poured into my life directly, showing me how to do a sound check and how to let your ministry leave the stage, as we would say. It shouldn't be just about you. It should be about the persons that are receiving you. So that's the biggest jump from background singing. You stand behind the mic and sing behind someone who's carrying the whole evening, all night. But when it's you up front, it's a different onus. So
right.
Join me.
Yes. And you've had so much preparation. We're excited about it.
You got this. He's like the guy that goes to the free throw and practice and takes like 200 shots a day, and he goes back and he goes back. So at that point, once he goes up to shoot, his whole team just walks on the other side. He's gonna make a shot.
It's a wrap.
That's the vibe that I'm getting. So you're good. You got this. You got this.
Well, but keep me at the mic. Don't put me on the free throw line. I'm telling you right now. He needs more practice at the free line.
It's all good. We all got our thing. It's guys, brand new by Thomas Warren Jr. It's available everywhere. Download it, stream it, send it to your friend, send it to your auntie. Just pick a song from there for your worship group.
Yes, please.
Whatever you have to do, you need to check this project out, man. If you like R&B, if you like some some hip hop, you like there's something in there you can latch on to. There's definitely something there. So we appreciate you coming on, Thomas, talking with us, sharing your heart, telling us about the project. We're looking forward to April 23rd. And you mentioned again, tell us, where can everyone find you? How can they follow you? How can they know more about what's happening on the 23rd?
Yes, thank you, family. Again, Thomas Warren Jr. on all your social media, Twitter, IG, Facebook, thomaswarrenjr.com. Please follow me. Stay attached to me for this journey. I would really appreciate it. And again, April 23rd, I'll be on Facebook in concert for you. So please join me. And I thank you, Gospel Music Buzz family, for having me today. And I really appreciate it.
It's an honor to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you. All right.
God bless.